Your attention, please.
Hey there, thanks for coming back to check out the second episode of the Prisoner podcast at backinthevillage.com. Today we're going to be covering the Chimes of Big Ben. As a quick note, in the episode I play a little snippet of the original arrangement of the Prisoner theme. And in the show notes I've put a YouTube link where you can listen to the entire arrangement, so definitely check that out, it's very cool and weird. So, enjoy the Chimes of Big Ben. Good morning. Welcome again to Back in the Village, the Prisoner podcast. I'm Clay McCormick from EatDeadMeat.com, and with me, as always, is Wes Teasdale from ThePenskeFiles.com. Hello, Wes.
How's it going, guys? Good to be seeing you. I've been trying to come up with a way to turn that into a greeting, and yes. It doesn't work out.
We shall be seeing you again today.
We shall be seeing you soon.
Today we're going to be talking about Chimes of Big Ben, which is the second episode of The Prisoner. And let's get right into it. It was directed by Don Chaffee and written by Vincent Tilsley.
Good name.
Good name.
Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling.
So the first thing I want to talk about is the credits. So the credits are a little bit different than the first episode. It's a little bit shorter. At least the whole drive-up kidnap sequence is a little shorter, but they've added something to the end of it.
What'd they cut?
They cut some, I think it's some small shots.
Just trim a second off of every shot or something?
Yeah, I think so. I think that shot of the way out door is gone, or at least they don't hold on it as much. And so they shorten that up a little bit.
Yep.
To make room for this another. It's weird because it happens after the title comes on the screen, and it's sort of like a piece of exposition that kind of brings you up to speed to what the setup for the show is.
Right, okay. The opening credits have this thing where they, you feel like you can't tell if the episode has started. It like starts and stops for 3 seconds because there's the intro credits, which you could mistake for an episode if you hadn't seen one. Then he wakes up,
right,
which you think might be the start of the episode, but then you see the chyron that shows you the title of the episode. And then, there's this third part which is not actively a part of the episode, but is sort of exposition.
Right. It gives you this breakdown. It introduces the new number 2, so you don't have to waste time in the episode figuring out how you're going to do that.
Right.
And it brings up basically the whole breakdown of the show, which is we want information. You are number 6.
You have what we want.
Yes. And then he responds with, I am not a number, I am a free man.
Right.
And then they laugh at him for being so naive.
And he's running on the beach.
Right, yes. It's a very glamorous beach running shot. Very, very nice day for night filter.
No, it does. It definitely sets the, it's like an artistic way to sort of remind you what's going on. I think some of the lines are just repeats from the pilot, right? There's just sort of, or he says the same line type thing. I'm not a number.
Yeah, it's sort of a Cliff Notes. It's not a direct lift from the pilot. It's all of that stuff I believe is
redone.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's augmented a little bit. It's basically like I said before, it's a condensing of the concept, which I really think is really interesting, because if you I can't think of another show that starts every episode with a fairly lengthy expository device to put you in the setup for the show.
Right.
With visually expository. It's not like the
Star Wars intro,
or it's not like Space, the Final Frontier.
Right,
These are it's not like that. It really just dumps you into it, and you have to figure out, okay, he's resigned from this thing. He has been kidnapped. It's sometimes not as gracefully as other times. Like one of my favorite shots is the close up of him slamming his hand down on the picture of a beach as he's packing his suitcase.
Not as graceful. Yeah, right. When he's packing up, everything, and the teacup slam too. He does a lot of slamming.
Right.
And then there's like a couple poorly lit shots. I can understand being artistic, but I think it's the one on the beach where it's real hard to see what's going on.
I think that's a matter of shooting some sort of day for night thing.
Right.
That stuff gets kind of murky.
Yeah, it gets mixed up.
I also love the theme song because it is so. Yeah, that's the third theme song. They had 2 previous ones
that haven't made it to the show.
Right, that were not in the show. They were not used. Excuse me. And the third one, the original version was much quieter. It was like, it's very hard to imagine in the show. It was like, do 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 do, like very like acoustic guitar kind of weird jazzy thing. And apparently McGoohan was like, no, we need more horns and bombast. And I just love that the guy was like, okay, we'll give you all of that. And there are so many thunder cracks. Yeah. Like every time he opens the door, like,
it's the guy with the tube with like the nails in it, making the rain sound as he tips it like an old radio program.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's so over the top, but I mean, it really, I think that whole opening sequence is great. It gets you into it, gets you into the mood of what's going on and some of the weirdness.
Yeah, I mean, it ties in with because the editing is no less, slightly, but the editing is still super hectic when things happen. So, I mean, I can't imagine going with a more low-key sort of anything with as far as how the show eventually turned out. So,
right.
It is. I like the intro. It goes on it's a surprisingly long time.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and it's usually when they have long intros, you get a lot of text on the screen. Right. You get hardly anything, any text.
Yep.
I also like that they use it as an excuse to show Rover for the first time.
Did they? Did I miss?
Yeah, as part of that addendum thing, as he's running, they do the bubbling up from the water, which is great because I like to think that's their way of going. So this is going to happen. There's going to be a giant white ball that comes out of the ocean and hunts people down. We're going to show you that at the front.
Yep.
So you don't feel weird about it when it happens later. We can talk more about Rover and his undefined powers later on.
Sure. I just wanted to say, we've had this debate. I have this debate about my podcast where you're unsure of how much information to give away. You're unsure if like a person listening to this type of thing is going to be like, I've never heard of this TV show. Let me listen to a podcast about it. And so if you're one of these, which I imagine in my viewpoint of the world, if you're 1% of the population that listens to a podcast that you've never seen a TV show of, the pilot episode for this show is totally different from this episode of what the show. I don't know if this is what the show becomes. I haven't seen all these episodes, but the pilot episode is, I think when I've 2020 looking back on it, I'm not sure it's a good episode. The pilot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The pilot is much more sort of all over the place, and this one is much more of a TV show. Right. It feels much more traditional, and of what you would expect something to come out of it. That's my initial takeaway from this one.
I agree. I think honestly, if you're going to watch this show, I think you need to watch the first 2 episodes back to back. Because as I said last time, when I started the show, the first time I ever watched it, the first pilot episode didn't really grab me that much. I mean, I was, taken by some of the elements and found it slightly interesting. But it wasn't until I watched Chimes of Big Ben that I said, oh, okay, this is what it's going to be like.
Yes.
Chimes of Big Ben is actually a lot more expository in explaining things than Arrival is.
Right.
There are some points in this episode where number 2 specifically touches on things that we talked about them not touching on at all.
Okay.
For instance, when number 8 shows up and he's showing what's happening with her to number 6, he makes it a point of saying she's in an exact replica of her room.
Up. It's quite like old times, isn't it, number 6? Do you remember your first day?
An exact replica of her own room, of course.
Right, I remember this now. Yeah, I had a problem in the pilot episode of just saying that they did not point things out. And this one, they definitely do go where he's saying it just to hit the point. It's almost like they had notes after the first episode. Like, you know, we need to clear up some things here.
Well, that's interesting for reasons I won't get into because it's so... They had a lot of things shooting at the same time.
Okay.
So they were kind of juggling different episodes and whatnot for various reasons, disputed reasons, but we won't get into that now.
Sure.
The pilot episode is weird because it's such a high concept for a it's such a high concept for a TV show in the 60s.
Yep.
And gives you so little up front in terms of just telling you, explaining X, Y, and Z that it's a lot of info to take in because you're getting so much stuff about the village and about the security system and about what the whole concept is.
I feel that the first episode gave me a sort of anxiety and in the fact that it's like you never center on anything. Mm-hmm. He's constantly just running around and he's very high strung, and not high strung, but he's sort of like, where the hell am I? Like, who are you? What's going on here? Blah, blah. And you never get the chance to like sit down and like breathe and be like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like now he's got a little plan going or whatever. Right. And here it's interesting because it opens with, he seems to have not bought into it, but he's like resigned fittingly. He's resigned himself to what this is.
Yes.
I mean, it wakes up with him, or it starts with him waking up. And like, you know, just going, he's wearing pajamas. Like he's obviously settled in enough where he's going to put on nightwear and he makes his breakfast and everything. And I just got a much more centered view of where he was coming from. And the calmness of his character made the show more easy to understand. He's more of a character that you can kind of like get behind, I think, in the second episode. Oh,
absolutely. I think he's a much more relatable character.
And the number 2s in the pilot had total control, and he is much more on equal footing with this one because of his awareness of the situation.
Right. The way 6 acts in this is he's, like you said, he hasn't settled down. He's sort of like sarcastically falling in line. Yep. Every interaction he has, everything he does is always with like a tongue-in-cheek kind of smarminess about it, where, you know, he's still constantly trying to get information out of people. Yeah. Like when he's playing chess with the Admiral, as they're playing, he's trying to get information out of the Admiral.
Ask where he served or something.
Right, or what army he was in, yep. And number 2 has a great line early on when he's watching number 6 get up in the morning, which is creepy in its own right, where he says he can make the simple act of putting on his dressing gown a gesture of defiance, which is a fantastic line. And which follows with number 6 taking the radio, which is blaring this music that you can't turn off, as we found out in the pilot, and instead of destroying the speaker like he does in Arrival, he just puts it into the refrigerator and closes it off so we can't hear it. He's kind of settled into this non-violent protest sort of way of dealing with things.
He's doing a very Gandhi-esque job. And I get the impression he's been there for a while at this point.
Yeah, we learn at the end of the episode that he's been there for, quote, months.
Okay.
As the Colonel tells him, he's like, "What? You were gone. You disappeared for months."
What a obnoxious British! Is that guy obnoxious by British standards?
We'll get to him at the end. I do want to talk about. They just got that guy from Central Casting of British people.
Yes, give me a offensive, like obnoxious stereotype. But anyway, to get back to I mean, I get the impression he's been there for months because he's bought into this thing. Mm-hmm. And also the fact that when number 8, the woman appears, the Russian woman, Natalia or something, she appears and they're watching her get up, and number 2's explaining that, oh, this is just how you must have felt when you showed up. Do you remember your first day here? And number 6 meets number 8. Sorry, the numbers get a little crazy after all. He meets number 8, and he is remarkably unhelpful. Which makes me, which implies to me that he's sort of gone through this all before.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if I was in the village and the next day someone new came, I'd tell them everything immediately. Be like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but like, what did you do? I did this. We need to work together. And he sort of toys with her.
Could you take me over there, please?
To the Green Dome? Yes, certainly. Across the square, across the street, up the steps. You can't miss it.
Can you get a car here?
Taxis, local service only.
Where will they take you?
Anywhere you like, as long as you arrive back here in the end. That's why they're called local.
Who are these people? Why are they here?
Why are you?
Right, 6 is there. He's been there for a while, and he still doesn't trust anybody.
That's true.
And so when she comes in, he reacts to her the way he's reacted to everybody else, which is, I don't know if you're...
Could be a trap.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think I love... Even then, though, he's sort of like... still poking for information because he's trying to figure out where she's from and why did you resign? So he's asking all the same questions, trying to get information out of her.
And he does another. He exposes his. I continue to insist he's a racist because he goes, "Where are you from?" She says, "Estonia." He says, "Are you Russian?" She goes, "No, I'm from Estonia." He goes, "You're Russian."
Well, that could be chalked up to the Cold War.
I know it's It's a. This had 2 wonderful. Sort of references that dated it. They mention he dreams to be the first man on the moon.
Yep.
And they mention the Iron Curtain.
Correct. Yes.
So it's which is the Iron Curtain is a little bit more recent, obviously, but he brings up as it's an impossible dream to be the first man on the moon.
Right. When in fact it was only 2 years away.
Yeah, that's what I had to look it up on Wikipedia. It's like I could have swore I underappreciate how late the moon landing was, I think, is the lesson I've learned from this.
What would have been great is if number 2's response was, "Oh, my dear boy, there've been men on the moon for a long time."
Yeah, that's or there'd be some it'd be something for like conspiracy theorists if he was like, "Oh, you'll see when you meet Neil Armstrong." What? I'm just like, what the fuck? Roll the tape back.
Do you still think you can escape, number 6?
Well, I'm going to do better than that.
Oh,
Going to escape and come back.
come back.
I mean, escape, come back, wipe this place off the face of the earth, obliterate it, and you with it.
So, speaking of number 2, this episode has a new number 2.
By far the best number 2 of the 3 I've seen.
Of the 3, yeah. Played by Leo McKern, who is, I believe, he's an Australian actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he pops up and stuff. You'll see him and think he's in The Omen.
He looks familiar. He looks super familiar. It looks like he could be a general in like a recent X-Men movie or something.
He's got kind of a Brian Cox.
Yeah.
He was in The Omen. He shows up in one of the Beatles movies. He's pops up and stuff all the time.
Sure.
What did you think of his character as far as... We've established in the previous episode that each number 2 seems to be differentiated by their approach.
Yes.
What did you think of number 2's approach this time?
Well, he brought the scarf back, which I appreciated. He is the most cartoonish of the number 2s that we've seen so far. He also seems to be the dumbest of all the number 2s.
I don't know if I'd say he's dumb. He's got like...
He is not in total control of the situation like the other number 2s were.
Yeah, I think the thing that always stands out to me about him is he's got a fascination with number 6. He's like very taken with 6.
Yes. Well, I think that's because they are the most equal.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, they are definitely on the same page. And,
yes.
and you know, the way that this number 2 handles things is much more of kind of like a chess match, sort of.
Yes.
Where he's taken with his opponent, and he wants to. He has a line in there where he's one of his attendants says something about breaking number 6, and 2 says no. I want him.
I don't want fragments of a man.
Yeah, I don't want fragments of a man. I want him to come willingly.
Right.
And that's, you know, it's a very different approach from the other two, which is a novel approach.
Yeah, I'd agree. Maybe his sort of smittenness with number 6 leads him to underestimate him or something. I'm really just thinking of, because not to jump too far, but he's clearly building a boat. This looks like a boat, and he does not seem to put that 2 and 2 together that this is a boat, because unless I missed the totally meta thread that's running through it, his escape in this episode seems legitimately an escape.
No, because the guy, I mean, number 8's been in on it the whole time. And,
That's
well,
true.
let's talk about what that is.
Okay, but that would be that's my reason for sort of undervaluing this number 2's intelligence. He seems to be the most clownish of them all, and he's the broadest,
right?
Sort
definitely.
of all of them.
Yes,
He'll crack.
Perhaps one tiny piece at a time. I don't want a man of fragments.
I thought a good way to, instead of summarizing the episode, a good way to talk about the plot of the episode is
that's good.
Is just to talk about what number 2's plan was for the episode.
Okay.
So in this episode, number 2's plan, or the way to break 6, is he convinces 6 that 6 has actually escaped the village by planting number 8 in there to get him on his good graces.
Yep.
And then he wins 6 wins a.
This is a. It doesn't seem that crazy of a plot until you start to retrace the steps that he took to get to this point. And his plot is to win an art competition.
Yeah.
And not only win, but use the winnings to buy the one piece that he seems incapable of getting to complete his plan.
I've thought about that. I don't know if he's incapable. I think it's just a big fuck you to number 2.
So number 2, he's going to give it to somebody else.
So so 6 decides to enter this art competition by building a piece of abstract art, which turns out to be a boat. It
turns out to be a huge hit. Yeah. He is apparently an extraordinary. Although it's kind of a commentary on art criticism, because they're like, "Oh, what do you think?" He's like, "Yeah, it's whatever you want." They're "Oh, that's brilliant."
That's the thing, because I don't know if it's a commentary on art criticism, because it's so, his treatment of the art critics is so dismissive, or if it's also a criticism of abstract art itself.
I'd buy either. Yeah.
And here he is, our very own Epstein.
Can I help?
We're not quite sure what it means.
It means what it is.
Brilliant. It means what it is. Brilliant. Oh, no, you mustn't let me influence you. You are the awards committee.
What puzzled me, number 6, was the fact that you'd given the group a title. Escape.
This piece, what does it represent to you?
A church door.
Right first time.
I think I see what he's getting at.
He might as well just be lighting up a cigarette. He's like, "Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be." She's like, "Oh, what's number 2?"
The big thing we learn about 6 from this thing is that he has Ron Swansian levels of competency as far as woodworking is concerned.
I learned something about the actor, because he chops wood like a man who chopped wood.
Yes.
That is not a Hollywood actor like swinging an axe at a tree. Like, I'm no outdoorsman. I live in fucking Boston, and I look outside and I get upset when my feet get wet. But he's got his little technique of like you sort of swing with like a chopping motion, a better way to explain it. But he's not just hitting it like a baseball bat, like hitting the tree. He certainly grew up chopping wood at some point in his life.
And he manages to chop down a sizable tree
in seconds. with a stone tied by yarn to a stick.
A kind of dull stone secured to a stick with twine. And then what in the show seems like a matter of minutes, but I think is over the course of weeks.
Yeah, you pointed this out, that earlier on they laid the groundwork that the Art Expo is in weeks or something.
Yes.
And he is working on this in the woods, but he doesn't change his outfit, which is probably the critical flaw.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when the montage became a thing that film would do.
Oh, yeah.
But
maybe this has one.
It does, but it's not. You need music, and you need different camera angles instead of just showing him sort of chipping away at the wood. So he turns this tree into a a boat, the hull of a boat.
If they had played Robert Tepper's No Easy Way Out over the montage, it would look, oh, of course, time is passing.
You know, he stands up and wipes the sweat off his brow a couple times, takes his shirt off maybe.
There's no easy way out. There's no shortcut home.
So he builds the boat, and he uses the boat to for he and number 8 to escape because she tells him that they're in Lithuania. And
there's a lot of geography going on in this episode.
But the thrust of it is they manage to escape the island, and he thinks that he's being sent back to his headquarters in England. But it turns out that the headquarters is actually also in the village, and the guys he answered to are answer to number 2.
The village has built a world within the village,
right,
to try to trick him.
And
possibly novel back then. Watching this now in 2015, it is not as novel of an idea as it potentially probably was back then.
Right. It goes to further the idea that that the
village has a huge amount of importance.
Yes, it has a far reach.
Yeah, far reach.
And you don't know who runs the village.
Right. And real people you trusted in the real world will come back and absolutely be complicit in whatever.
Right. It's kind of like the thing they're doing in the Marvel movies now with Hydra. How, they had that big turnover and it's like, oh, well, Hydra has infiltrated everything.
Sure.
So you never know who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. So in this case, he's meeting people that he's known for years only to find out that they are agents of the village. Whether or not that means the village is an English construct or these guys are double agents, we don't know.
Right. Or, if it's some sort of a global... What's the thing that runs the world?
Conspiracy?
Yeah, but the Illuminati. Okay, there we go. I got it at the same point. Yeah, if there's some sort of...
all hail the Illuminati.
Yeah, exactly, We had to feign not knowing the Illuminati when obviously it's the first thing in our
What you can't see right now is Wes and I are doing the secret Illuminati handshake.
Let's touch rings.
Yeah. But so, that's why I think... It's really, this episode is so much of a chess match, because you get at the end when 6 finds out that he hasn't made it back and he's actually still in the village.
Yes.
That all of this stuff was a setup.
Yep.
Number 8 being on his side was a setup. The guys that he knew from before was a setup.
Yep. Although he had... Judging by how this is made, he legitimately was on airplanes.
Yes. Yeah. No. See, that's the thing. What it does is I think I mentioned this in the last episode when I was talking about his buddy who shows up and then dies.
The hospital suicide.
Pretends to kill himself. For these. It's a long game. The village is not above setting up the really long con.
Yes.
And this I think as far as long cons go, this is pretty impressive.
Credits are not a problem in this world. Yeah, they were willing to spend anything because he travels the world, and the con is so good that the people moving the box actually act like UPS workers.
Right.
They're like, this is fragile, and they're just throwing it around and whatever.
Right. However, the saddest part about it is I hope someone got fired or liquidated or something, because that plan was very, very close to working. If it hadn't been for someone not understanding time zones when they were setting up the whole con.
Yeah, it's that
would have been, they would have figured it out, because he was in the process of, he started the sentence to explain why he was going to resign.
Yep.
And then he realized that his watch and Big Ben were on the same time. And that because he got the watch in Poland, so it shouldn't be the same time.
Big Ben. It's just struck 8. My watch says 8.
So?
I was given this watch by a man in Poland. I particularly wanted it to check the time to make sure that the trip tallied with the journey to London.
Which it presumably did.
So, of course, would you like to explain to me how a man in Poland came to have a watch showing English time when there's 1 hour's difference?
The first time I watched it, I've watched this twice now, but the first time I sort of felt proud of myself. I realized, like, when it chimed, I was like, oh, the time zones are different. And then I did it. I was like, oh, I feel clever for myself. The only problem was I felt that they were hitting why did you resign? Tell me why you resigned. Tell me now. Tell me now. Tell me.
Yes.
At this point, anyone who asks him why he resigned, he should immediately be like, well, fuck you. Like, you're part of this.
That is actually that sequence is the moment that this show really got me, like hooked me. Because, again, I wasn't really super into it. Then I was watching this episode, and they get to that point when the colonel starts saying, why did you resign? I was like, oh, shit. This whole thing is
yeah.
That's brilliant. This is great. And that was what really got me into it, because the fact that they were going that far out of it to just pull off this crazy scheme to answer this one simple question, it was just I really enjoyed it.
It's everything every employee wants or employer wants to know. Every Dunkin' Donuts manager is like, why did you resign?
But yes,
one question, what is he achieving by unplugging things? What's he trying to do?
I think he's just trying to find out where the sound's coming from. Because
is that what he was doing? I thought he figured it by accident.
Because he was pulling the things out, and he pulls that one out, and the sound stops. So.
Yes, I noticed.
The other thing, so in the year 2015, while watching this episode...
It's currently our star date right now.
Yes. We are in the future. There is a level of technological suspension of disbelief you have to have while watching this show.
Yes.
Because at the end of the episode, when he finds out that it's all a trap, he does so by pulling the plug on a reel-to-reel tape machine that doesn't seem to be connected to any speakers.
No.
So in order for this thing to be playing a sound of bustling London and the chimes of Big Ben that was to sound effectively real, you would need a pretty elaborate sound system.
Yes, so we'd have to assume this is somehow wirelessly sending sound to speakers around the show.
I mean, it still works because analog is always a better storytelling device than digital.
That's why this podcast is recorded in analog sound.
That's why you should only play this podcast on a Victrola. If you go to our website, you can buy wax discs.
We offer Laserdisc and cassette tape versions of
We are actually recording this through handheld megaphones that we're holding up to the thing, and we're all wearing straw hats. Well, since analog is a better storytelling device than digital, so when not that digital existed, but you know what I mean. Right. So when he opens the thing to find the tape player, that immediately gets across what's happening. He sees the tape player, plugs it in, the things start turning, he starts hearing the music or the sounds or whatever. And I think it still works really well, because you get across everything.
It does. The only one thought I had after he exposes the sound is like, really? No windows in this executive level office. It's a strange choice too, but I mean that's a minor nitpick, but the sound killing is interesting, and I suppose it's just kind of a plot-wise just a nail in a coffin thing, because as I said, it's just his endless need to know why people are resigning is really the sort of thing that it seemed to tip for you, a tip for me. Right.
And I mean, that guy, as you were saying before, is
hilarious.
The most stereotypically, it's like a British person cast by an American person who hates British people.
My dear chap, I do apologize. You had a long journey, you must be exhausted. Now, I expect you could do with a decent drink. Scotch?
24 work units.
What?
That's how much it cost to the village.
Ah, yes. The village.
Surely you know about it.
All I know, old boy, is that you resigned from a post of the highest possible secrecy in this country, refused to give your reasons, and then promptly vanished.
I was kidnapped.
Oh, really? How dramatic. And then, after a gap of months, we suddenly receive a suitably coded message that you're coming back from the other side of the Iron Curtain.
You think I've gone over?
And come back here to carry on the good work.
No.
No, he says. No. Niet. Niet. What sort of imbeciles do you think we are?
Yeah, I feel the actor came in and he's like, I'm going to talk like this, old chap. And they're like, oh, that's perfect. Could you get an obnoxious mustache as well that you can constantly sort of touch as you're going through this? I found his mustache so entrancing. There's just something about it.
Everything about him is like a hilarious stereotype of for a show made by British people.
Yeah,
to have a stereotype of a British upper level person is pretty funny.
Yeah, it'd be like having a parody of like a Texan in the White House. Be like, right. Well, yeah, boy, we're going exactly. Like a Louisiana gumbo. Like we're gonna get them out of here. We'll do whatever. But it's he's absurd for for how much screen time he gets. Do you know something about that actor, or do you
No,
just want to hold up?
I would like to remain in. I would like to not peek behind the curtain on that one. I would prefer not to find out that he's actually from like Georgia or something.
or he contributed 95% of the scripts under all the fake names. He's the real genius behind the show.
That's right. The night is young, and there are many questions. First, why did you resign?
So on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you rate number 2's plan this time?
Let's see. So 5 is good, obviously.
You know what? I'm sorry. On a scale of 1 to 6.
1 to 6. All right. On a scale of 1 to 6. Where 6 is perfect and 1 is not very good. I have to dock a point for... So at this point, it's a little bit cliche. I'm not saying when this aired, maybe this was like a hugely original, or no one had really explored where this was going. I'd give him a... Now I have to think about the problems with this plan. I'd give it a 4, I think. 4 out of 6 in terms is fairly good. It's above average. A lot had to work out for it, and right. I'm really just trying to think about the Russian aspect, or the Estonian aspect, I suppose, as how this all played out. So we've established that you can escape the village. You can sort of sail away.
Well, I mean...
But we've established the village seems to... The show says this exists in a very specific place. Like, it is somewhere. But
it might not. Because...
Well, everything they've said in the show, like, I don't believe it's whatever he said, 30 miles from Poland or whatever, because that all seems to be wrong. But he is traveling around. Like, he is physically going places.
Right.
And so it's really just the sort of Russian, Estonian aspect. I think it's good. I felt the second time I was watching, I felt like I had more problems. Do you have any problems with the way it worked out? I'm having a hard time remembering that.
My biggest problem is that it is such a long con.
Yeah.
There are other things that come later that are a lot simpler. There are other things that are even more complex. You know, part of the fun of the show is seeing when, you know, things turn and it's like, oh shit, they went really far this time to get that information.
Sure.
I think the biggest problem with it from a storytelling aspect is you get so much intercut footage of number 2 reacting as though he doesn't know what's going on. So when they're sailing off, he reacts like, oh, well, okay, well, they're almost out of range. We should trigger an orange alert and send Rover after.
Right, yeah.
So I think it gets a little gray there, because, I mean, technically you could go either way with whether or not they're cheating in terms of what they're showing you.
Yeah.
But as far as just the plan goes itself, I'd say it's probably a 4 or 5. I'd say it's a 5. I guess the 6 would be if they actually break him. So
right, yes. I guess 6 is the sort of unattainable,
right. So I would say it's a 5 because they almost get him.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's a 4 because it's undone by such a minor detail.
See, I think you could fix that by, if his escape up to the point of meeting the Russians, the Estonians, excuse me, is legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And could you fix her at that point? Could you fix her being in on it? No, probably not. She's always there.
At the end, she kind of implies that she might actually be higher up than number 2. Because as she's leaving, she mentions that it was a good plan and that she'll make note of that in her report. Yep. I guess it doesn't really necessarily imply. But I kind of took it this time. I was like, oh, maybe is she actually like
important in this?
Yeah, she's someone who is higher up than number 2, coming from outside, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, gotcha.
But you know, whatever, that doesn't matter.
No, yeah, it's honestly, I'm now trying to rack my brains thinking about what happened, but I guess them being in on it the entire time changes everything that you see. It also unfortunately invalidates his art gallery win, Because they would, no matter what he had done, they would have been like, well, he's got to win.
Which then also is an undermining of art criticism.
Yeah, so maybe this is just deeper. We need to go further down the rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
But I'd be upset if that happened. I really hope that he was just so skilled at his craft that he won this art thing. But I guess that probably can't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give this number 2 a 4 in terms of his craftiness, where the other two didn't really have plots that they were going. They were mostly in a contain mode against him at that point.
Yeah.
This is the first plot.
Yeah, that's what, as I said last time, that's my biggest problem with the first episode, is that they kind of give you that twist at the end for the sake of giving you like something interesting that's not just exposition about the village.
Right.
It's not until this episode that it really feels like, oh, they're actually telling you a story.
Yes. Yeah, and I did. I like the interplay. I like the sarcastic quips between the two of them.
Right. I think the writing is very sharp in this episode. It's very their back and forth is very good, and all of 6 dialogue is very biting and done well.
Yeah, the one bad thing I guess I don't understand now is I don't understand her flirting in the box. Unless this is just a comedy thing, they're just playing it for comedy. What's she gaining by this? So they're traveling together.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they're playing it off like a old married couple where she's like, does your side of the box smell funny? He's like, no, I'm just trying to go to sleep.
I mean, if I had to look at it from the standpoint of being a quote unquote double agent, I think it would just be like trying to further ingratiate herself with him.
Yeah. Okay.
But speaking of number 8, I wanted to talk about their relationship. So they have number 8's use in this episode is very specific, because I feel like number 2 brings her in and specifically sets her up as having the same story as number 6, where she has information, she has resigned, and she has been sent to the village.
Goodbye.
I've done nothing wrong. I've committed no crime. All I did was resign.
No use telling me.
So he uses that as a way to play on 6's emotions.
Right, because same situation.
Right, he's seeing happen to her exactly what happened to him. Although it's interesting because they're much more brutal to her than they were to him. Or at least as far as we know.
Well, they threaten her with death. I don't think,
right.
Unless, well, it goes into the whole thing, was she really in any danger at that point, so maybe it was just light static electricity that was sparkling on the floor.
But as far as 6 knows, they are being a lot harsher to her.
And which is fun. And what he even mentions, number 2 is like, yeah, she's not even that important. I don't even know why we're torturing her like this. This is kind of strange. It's, it's a good point. I do have one question it brings up to me. Hopefully this isn't too distracting, but it's implied that the village is where people who are important go.
Right.
Who are all these other douchebags that don't seem to be... The captain doesn't seem to be important at all. Are they actors or are they important in some minor scheme of something?
Well, he was an admiral for something.
He was.
He had some sort of high standing.
Okay.
I don't know. I think
Or is it just a construct to have other people there?
That's the question. You never know who is there legitimately and who is a construct, a placement, and who is there legitimately but has turned.
Okay. Am I supposed to go forward just thinking this is a place where high level intelligence people go as a sort of means to control them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I think as far as everybody else goes, there's never a definite explanation of who everybody is.
Yep.
So you can kind of suspect everybody of anything.
Okay, sure. I was a little bit confused by his feelings for her. Mm-hmm. They had that weird scene where he brought the radio outside,
right,
and was stroking her hair,
right.
Is he pretending? Are they doing something? I mean, I understand bring the radio out because they're trying to like muffle their talking or something. I didn't know why he was touching her hair.
Yeah, I think what he's doing there is he's using the radio to muffle the talking, but he's playing it up like they're falling in love. Because they cut back to number 2, and he's like, "Oh, young love," or whatever.
Yeah. Number 2 doing great business with the chair too as well. Man. Every scene he might as well have done one where he was like, like when you were a little kid on the sofa, you were just sort of sitting upside down, like with your feet over the back of the chair. He should have been doing that at some point.
Leo McKern is a large man.
Yes.
And I can only assume he got that big because of all the scenery he chooses.
It's an uncomfortable chair to rise out of. You're kind of in a
you have
bowl.
To kind of
and pull your
launch yourself out of it.
Number 6. Let me just tell you.
Those chairs, there's no way those are comfortable in any way.
No. Great design, though.
Yes.
I'd love to have one in my house.
Oh, it would be only if it rises up from the floor.
But to get back to the thing, so I do sort of understand that he's doing that to sort of trick them into thinking. I don't know what he gains from that. It makes sense, sort of.
Yeah.
As it is, I don't know what he really gets out of it.
I think it's just a way to make it seem like
he's buying in.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
The interesting thing, though, is that you could argue that number 6 learns a very important lesson as far as this episode goes, because unless
he's never getting laid in the village, this is just not going to happen.
Well, it's interesting because in order to have a relationship with someone, you have to have trust, obviously, right? And this seems to be a time where he does believe her. Like, he does believe this person.
Yes.
You know?
His whole... When he's with the other Estonian, he seems completely having bought into the fact that he's escaped.
Right. And, I think part of that is because of the way she's introduced, and also because she is very, very similar to him in terms of she doesn't respond to the number. She actually tells him her name.
Yes.
So I think they probably click on some level, and he actually, for once, buys it.
Yep.
And which really accents the ending when he finally figures it out and he leaves the office. He's just like, it's such like a slow,
his angriest be seeing you.
Yeah, shoulders hunched, slow walk to the door, and then just like when he sees her with number 2, he just like shoots him this shit look. Right.
And he also, what's interesting is he patented the Larry David look before Larry David claimed it for his own, with sort of slacks with like sneakers, shoes. Which is a nice thing. I appreciated that.
There are some people who talk and some people who don't, which means that there are some people who leave this place and some who do not leave. You are obviously staying.
Has it ever occurred to you that you're just as much a prisoner as I am?
Oh, my dear chap, of course, I knew too much. We're both lifers.
So there's one other scene in there that I think is really interesting to talk about.
Sure.
And that's the scene with number 6 and number 2 on the beach. So number 6 and number 2 are on the beach, and they have this discussion, which is really the most frank discussion 6 and 2 have had up to this point of any of the number 2s.
Yeah.
Where, again, like you were saying, I think 6 and 2 realize they're kind of on the same level.
Yep, intellectually.
And 6 makes the insinuation that number 2 is also a prisoner, and he laughs it off. He's like, oh, of course I am. And then he goes into this big monologue about the world at large, sides not mattering anymore. It doesn't matter who number 1 is, doesn't matter who runs the village, because both sides, quote unquote, are a mirror of each other.
Yep. They basically want to export the village into the world at large.
Right.
Yeah.
And you learn from this that number 2 has been completely converted, basically, just from the way he's talking, because when 6 is like, oh, the whole world is the village, he kind of wistfully goes, that is my dream, or something like that.
Yep.
But I think it's a really interesting conversation because it's the first time that they really kind of, where a regular spy show would kind of, just to like, oh, well, the Russians are the bad guys, that kind of stuff. They kind of use this as a moment to talk about more of like the ethics of the Cold War, sort of, or maybe if not ethics, but more like
ideology.
Yeah, the ideology and kind of the, I don't want to say silliness, but that sort of, the two sides don't realize that they are the same kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
And it's in a show like this where I think you can get away with that kind of conversation and have it not come off as like overly dramatic. Because if that conversation was in a regular spy show,
yeah,
that would be like, very heavily lit.
Right. It's on point, I suppose. Yeah, and it's it might have been more on point actually during the Cold War. Right. Where now we're so removed from it. You're like, I guess they could have been talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's a it's definitely the most blunt that they've ever been about it, and their desire to export through domino theory, I suppose, into this world global domination of a bizarre village setup.
Yeah, and it also does bring up something that I have always been fascinated with as far as the show and the structure goes, which is it kind of accents that, as well as a couple other things that happen or they say through this episode, kind of accents the idea that the constructs are not super important as far as the story they're telling, which I think is, really interesting because, again, going back to the intro, they give you all the exposition, get that out of the way, and so they can just tell you a story.
Sure.
So, and that number 2 literally saying it doesn't matter who runs the village, doesn't matter who number 1 is, all this kind of stuff, is sort of reaffirms that they can give you this concept and just use this kind of high-level concept to tell just interesting stories, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
So, do we want to talk about Rover's little tiny rover hands at all?
His little rover feet, that he uses to grab on. Rover, this is Aquatic Rover in this episode. He's only in the water.
Right. I think I really like the effect of him
coming out of the bubbles.
No, of him actually skimming across the water.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that.
I can only assume they got a gigantic air cannon and just shot it at him like a giant leaf blower or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking, it's like if you filled the balloon with a little bit of water in itself, and then just pulled it on a string, maybe it would do that. But it does look strange. It doesn't bounce as much as you'd expect
it just
a balloon to bounce.
Skims really nicely. That effect looks great. The effect that doesn't look so great is when apparently instead of just consuming them like he did in the last episode, or just bouncing lightly on top of them. When Rover has to drag someone, he grows little mini rover hands.
Little rover hands, and it sort of surrounds a person in the water and pulls them back to safety.
Yeah, it's not the most graceful special effect.
Yeah, maybe I just overestimate. Why couldn't they just do the thing before where it absorbs the person and then spits the person out?
Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't do that. Yeah. I think it would have been a cleaner way to do it.
Right, and it goes with the way that this thing actually seems to exist.
Yeah.
And also that you can shoot Rover. Well, now it's all in question, isn't it? Because you don't know if they just called off Rover.
Yeah. I guess you can shoot him, but you won't pop.
You won't pop, yeah.
Like he does in the Simpsons episode.
Yes, with a great rifle. No, apparently you can shoot at him and nothing will happen. Well, though, for the number 6 is all of his fantastic wood chopping, his boat diving. Not up to snuff when he says we got to swim for it, and then just tumbles out of them.
Yeah. Hey, maybe isn't that how scuba divers do it? They just
over back, with the tube or the thing on their back. But he's just
6 just kind of face plants.
He does, he doesn't even kick off his sneaker shoes.
No, well, those are sweet shoes. Yeah. Those are probably 14 credits.
He commented on those. I know 24 for, and the only other real thing I know is how come they don't give them alcohol? You think alcohol would be something that would provide them?
I think,
or it's non-alcoholic alcohol,
right? I think it's another thing where to keep tensions and to keep what's the word I'm looking for?
Just keep sort of their banter, to keep people up intellectually on there.
To keep the rabble down. People start drinking, start to get drunk.
I just feel that would be my first plan. Be like, you want to tell me where you resigned? You go, no. You'd be like, you want a drink? You go, okay. You want another 6 drinks?
What it probably is that real alcohol reacts so poorly with all the other shit that they're pumping into them to knock them out.
Yeah, probably.
They probably have a lot more dead prisoners on their hands.
The village is built on the bodies of everyone who's come before them. That cemetery we saw in the pilot episode is not all that there is out there. Good episode, though.
Yeah. For a little bit of trivia, the stage next door to where they shoot most of their interiors was where Stanley Kubrick was shooting 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right. I think you mentioned that last because I just thought it was funny that the amount of their set. The set was probably leftovers from the trash, the dumpster.
I actually think I cut that out of the last week's episode. But actually, there was a scene in this episode that was cut where 6 has is using some sort of machine to look at the stars to try and map out where the village is or something.
Okay.
And they do a shot of the stars which apparently is very difficult to shoot. And so the assistant director or the film librarian or something was like, shit, where are we going to get this? Wait a minute. Stanley Kubrick is shooting 2001 next door. So on the sly, he went over there and dealt with the special effects guy who let him shoot their sky plate.
Right.
So that shot of the sky that they use is actually from 2001: Space Odyssey.
Shot for shot from 2001.
Yeah. And as the guy said in the interview that I got that from, he could never talk about that as long as Stanley Kubrick was alive.
Oh, poor Kubrick. Did you listen? Not to distract. Did you listen to the? Do you watch Eyes Wide Shut? Do you know Eyes Wide Shut?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Do you like Eyes Wide Shut?
I really enjoy Eyes Wide Shut.
Okay. It holds up well.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in a while, but I don't know why people crap on it as much as
No, I didn't. We watched it. Yeah. But anyway, back to the Prisoner.
Another interesting piece of trivia. Last episode, I mentioned that we were watching the episodes in the order that they come on the DVD, which is the way that they were broadcast originally in Britain. But there are other combinations that you could watch it in.
Sure. Hatchet order.
Yeah. Like I think they are fan created.
Yeah.
Because as you'll see, most of these episodes are standalone stories that you could really watch in any order. So I think a lot of people have really looked into certain tiny details to try and figure out, oh, well, obviously this isn't the right order because this happens here and this happens before that, so we should watch that, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Apparently, when they broadcast the show in Canada only showed 13 episodes, and the Chimes of Big Ben was the finale.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why they did that.
Yep.
I've read that they think it was because they were expecting a second season or something, so they held back. I don't know.
Okay.
But with that in mind, I had that in mind when I watched it again, and I actually thought it would be a pretty good finale.
Well, that implies that this is the biggest plan that they will ever hatch.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like I said, the long game is huge in this.
Yep.
But, yeah, it is a pretty sizable plan.
Okay.
I don't want to get into that yet because you haven't seen the other episodes. But I mean, as far as how close they get and just being a satisfying story, I mean, if I hadn't seen the other ending episodes, I would, and that was the last episode. I would go, yeah, okay, that was pretty good. That was a solid finale.
Yeah, well, it has the final scene of someone walking away like that usually implies, or you could tend to see that as a sort of, it's a bookmark of an ending.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, he's going to go off and do whatever now.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they did that, but I think it's an interesting thing to think of as it's very strange that it's the second episode here.
Right, and Canada was like, we'll put that at the end, eh?
Yeah.
It's a nice episode.
Also, you should ask your dad about this show. Ask him if he watched it.
Yeah, if he remembers it. Maybe
he watched it when
see.
he was younger. Have him on as a guest.
Oh, it's like, what did you think of that British guy? That sounded crazy.
So
no, I'll mention it to him. He'll bring up some spoiler immediately. Be like, it was crazy at the end in that Canadian episode.
Overall, what do you think compared to the first episode?
I like this episode much more than the first episode. The first episode had me worried that the show was going to be more avant-garde than it actually is.
Yeah, they definitely pull it back a bit in this one.
Yeah, they do. Not that I have anything sort of against that, but I do like sort of a like a backbone to my stories. Probably why movies are better for avant-garde type things. You can do it in an hour and a half and be done with it.
Well, not to cut you off, but I was actually talking about this with my girlfriend earlier, where I was saying the thing that's so unique about this, I think this is one of the most unique TV shows I've ever seen. As far as, plot, high concept, execution, everything, I think is very, very unique and very ballsy for the 60s.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons it feels that way is what they're doing in a TV show is so much more suited to a movie. Because it's so weird and it's such a high concept, it feels like something that would make more sense in a movie.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Especially in the 60s where TV, serialized fiction TV was not exactly,
the high point of
it was not exactly Thomas Pynchon,
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're to the point where it's inverted now, where TV is probably, I would say it definitely is. TV is the deeper medium than film is at this point.
Right, which is really, I mean, I think you could teach classes on this show if you wanted to. I think it's very, I'm surprised it's not more well known. I mean, it's definitely, people still know it. But it
has a fairly active subreddit. I wouldn't, maybe not fairly.
I haven't even looked at it.
Yeah, there's a Reddit where people post every day or two, probably about something.
I'll have to tell them about this podcast.
Follow this, the prisoner.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's, especially now, I think it deserves a bit of a recognition, because I think it's pretty outstanding for when it was made and what it tries to do.
Yeah, I mean, my final thing would really just be, if you're watching, again, if you have not seen the show and you're listening to the podcast for some reason, but I would definitely stick through the first episode. I'm not sure in hindsight the first episode is great. It does a lot of bricklaying.
Right.
But this is much more of a TV show, which is more enjoyable to me as a viewer of that.
Yeah, and I would say, again, if you're going to watch them, I would watch them back to back, because I think you get a much smoother intro to the whole idea if you watch a 3-hour movie.
Yeah, certainly don't give up after the pilot. You definitely need the second episode to balance things out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the third one. Should be good.
Which will be titled A, B, and C, which is one of my favorite episodes. So it should be a good one. And that'll be the next one. That's pretty much it for the Chimes of Big Ben. I want to thank everybody for listening, and thanks to Wes, who's been awesome. You can't spell awesome without Wes.
That's right. And then some.
Oh! Ooh, I think you're gonna make a T-shirt out of that.
That's a bumper sticker for myself. Well, this is over, guys. There will be no further episodes.
I'm just gonna drop this mic on the ground, and that'll be it.
Cool.
So if you want to follow us, you can follow on Twitter @PrisonerPodcast. Again, I'm by no means an expert on the show, so if you have anything you'd like to add or correct me on, you can email me at theprisonerpodcast@gmail.com. I would be happy to read and then disregard your email.
And I'd like to know why people like this show. I mean, not that I don't dislike, but I'd like to know.
Fuck you, man.
I'd like to know what the fuck exactly people are thinking when they're watching this.
I don't even know why people watch TV.
I'd need to know, because I mean, you as a person, it kind of makes sense to me. You sort of stumbling into this because you're sort of into this kind of thing with what you do. I can understand, and my parents, I could understand it would be on TV at a certain point or whatever. But there seems to be a large community around it, and having never heard of the show, I'd like to know why people know of it.
Well, yeah, it's actually the people I come across who know it love it.
Yep,
is what I've found. So yeah, if you're listening and you'd like to explain to Wes what emotions are and why people like things, you can email me at theprisonerpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter @prisonerpodcast. And yeah, we'll see you next time with A, B, and C.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.